We live in a world where we are persecuted beyond measure. Everybody that's in this room right now is under that persecution. We saw in Florida, and we're still seeing in Florida, the most coordinated attack that we've ever seen on our profession. And it came from all angles, and they even hit Chip Merlin, somebody who I would consider one of the godfathers of this whole thing. He's been in litigation forever. He's been licensed as a home state in Florida for, I think, 4 decades. And they came after him and said that he wasn't licensed because his license says William and not Chip. But nobody had enough sense to actually check to make sure that Chip was William, and they went and made a complaint to the Bar Association. If you're going to go after somebody like that, then what does that person in the back row right there stand a chance? Right? If they're going to come after somebody that has that much money as Chip does, as successful as he's been, it means that they will come after anybody and everybody. The thing that hasn't occurred to all of us is we all believe that public adjusting was fairly new, that it came around somewhere in 1935 and then it just kind of popped up on the scene, and then that was kind of the history of where it began at. Come to find out, that's nowhere near close. Right now, Leland Kuntz has got it traced back to 1863. I don't have the actual case on that one, but I've got one that's close, which is 1893. In that claim, a public adjuster sued and was successful, and he was named in the lawsuit as a public adjuster. 1893. That was a long time ago, wasn't it? Far before 1935. The lawsuit in which Leland has is where the public insurance adjuster in the lawsuit, they name them public adjuster, licensed public adjuster. Records, as everybody has told you before, are important. The only reason that they would have put licensed public adjuster on there was because why? He obviously had a license. In 1863, they didn't use the license reference in the 1893 claim, but they did use the term public adjuster. The suit was successful. So fast forward to 1921. In 1921, there was a National Association of Insurance Commissioners meeting held. Most of the nation's commissioners ended up there. So one thing that we can all agree on is in that one room, the most powerful people in insurance, the ones who regulate it from the top down, were inside of this meeting. Who do you think was on the agenda of this meeting? At first look, it looks like the insureds were, or the public adjusters were. Much like a policy, the more that you read the document, you come to figure out that's the truth. Public insurance adjusters were the only thing, save an attorney, something that they would never be able to get rid of, that was standing in the way of the insurance company and the insureds, and the insurance companies having their entire way, where they simply ruled everything that was going on. Matter of fact, in 1921, when this meeting was going on, there's a passage in here that we'll look at that says that in Pennsylvania in 1921, one could not stand in the corner and count the number of public adjusters. That sounds like more than one, doesn't it? Sounds like more than a handful. It sounds like a whole lot of them, if they cannot be counted in one city in that time period. Right now, there's roughly 10,000 public adjusters in the entire United States. What happened? How did we go from having so many in one area that you couldn't count them to having less than 10,000 to service an entire nation? Let's see what happened. This is Milch versus Westchester. And if you look at and I'm going to step down here and walk around a little bit because I can't see shit. Okay, the plaintiff at the time of the transaction was a public adjuster. June of 1895. That's law. You can't hide that. Where's the rest of our history at? How many of you have researched public adjusting as a profession and tried to figure out where it came from? I know that there was an attorney, and I can't remember her name, that was with Merlin's firm. You probably know who it is. She did all that research about the public adjuster. What was her name? No, somebody else. I talked to her briefly. But she was wholeheartedly believing at that point that 1935 was the starting point, which told me she didn't get very far. That right there says public adjuster in 1895. That's us by name. This is before you ever heard of a staff adjuster or an independent adjuster. None of these things were talked about in this point in time. Why do you think they weren't talked about? They didn't exist. The public adjuster ran the claim for the insured and was paid by the insurance company to perform that duty for them. But the problem was that public adjuster was not beholden to who? Carrier. So their financial interests were aligned where, Doug? With the insured, not with the insurance company. And the insurance companies didn't like that shit. So what happened was they had a meeting. The meeting, we have the minutes, we have the whole, if you want this after the conference, Derek's got a copy of this actual full document that's searchable. You can download it, you can Control-F it, you can find out pretty much anything that you want to. Something that I want you to keep in mind is that when they wrote this document, it wasn't 2023 and we had cell phones laying on every table. The method of communication wasn't such that I could talk to Doug in New York this evening right after he leaves here because he got on a plane and left. In other words, they never believed that somebody would be sitting here going through what they did to figure out how we got here. Now, you'll see that my breath will get short, I'll get angry, and I'll probably turn purple a couple times. Pisses me off. As you start to look at it, you start to understand. We have believed for a long time that McKinsey & Company was the architects. They were not. They were the reboot. They were the modernization of this 1921 meeting right here. Now, see the words that I have highlighted. Public adjuster as a necessity or as a beneficiary or a menace. These are all commissioners here. There can be no legitimate field for the public adjuster as I see it. This is a commissioner speaking. This is not an idiot. This is not a senator. This is not some lobbyist. This is actually the commissioner of insurance, and this is what he's saying. On the other hand, I do not see how he can be legally prevented from attempting to do it. The License Act was never about regulation. It was about control. It was about having their thumb on somebody, and it really became about the process itself. Skip down a little bit, and I'm trying to kind of get through because we got short on time, but I still want to be thorough. The vexatious question. It would be well to define the term public adjuster. How many of you can define the word public adjuster? And somebody asked a question a while ago of Candace. When they ask us, what we did, what do we tell them what our methodology was? Do you know what the single most simple answer that you can give that question is? And it defines who we are. Duties after a loss, that's absolutely correct. But the problem is, and the reason this whole thing exists, is because we had to get the insured to believe that they had no responsibility whatsoever. In the annihilation of the public adjusting firm, if you admitted that the public adjusting firm existed for a single purpose, what have we done? We validated it. We validated who you are and the existence of what's going on, and by validating that, what did we then do? We gave factual truth that the insured must absolutely perform as per the contract before anything else is due. So if we start to annihilate this concept, we annihilate the public insurance adjuster, and we annihilate the concept. How do we do that? Well, there's a couple of ways. This is as they're talking about how they're going to do the licensure. I highlight these words because he says, note the words trustworthy and untrustworthy. Can anybody in this room define for me either one of those words? If I can't define it, it makes it really gray, right? And if it's really gray, then I give the person that's going to license you the leeway to be the person who is the credible person that says that you're either trustworthy or you're not. That's what the gentleman is saying here. I won't call him a gentleman many more times. Whom he deems to be trustworthy and competent. No department could ask a greater leeway than these two sections afford. Why would he say that? It means I have the power of the pen. I've already told you that I don't like PAs and that you have no position here in this earth. And that I'm telling you that before you can get this license, that before you can work, that you're going to have to pass my trustworthy test, my competency test, when I've already stated in writing that there could be no good place for you here. Notice the mention of proof of loss. They will say that word in this document many, many, many times. This was the time before they annihilated it. See, the proof of loss does what? It should trigger coverage. So if we annihilate the proof of loss, you never triggered coverage, and you can never do what, Philip? Sue me, can you? You didn't complete the duties after a loss. The suit against us clause has not been met, and now what we're doing is you become a very high-priced public adjuster because you've now got to go back in and perform those duties after a loss, and there's no legal malfeasance here because two attorneys are involved, correct? This is a vicious cycle, is it not? It's the cycle that they made right here. They had when this was going on, there was a 3-year period that they did statistics on. And remember, this is a time when we had horse and buggy. There weren't telephones, there weren't things of even computers to transfer data back and forth. But yet these people have been able to coordinate all over the world with data and money and be able to tell you in specific terms what they spent on the cost of the claims without telling you. The person we're talking about here, this commissioner, he was not your typical commissioner. He was brought in from somewhere else. In the document, he talks about London. He talks about people over the pond and that we should be independent of them. After you read the entire document, I think it becomes clear this guy was from London. But it's a classic attack. You send your own people over there to infiltrate, but it's actually you that are infiltrating, and you're getting in there and putting in there what you want. Percentage of loss to insurance in force. In 1918, $3.33% of every dollar went towards paying a claim. 1919, 3.55, and 1920, $8.70. Or 8.7%. This whole convention is about annihilating these specific people. Yet the loss ratios that they're talking about are 3%. Where's the rest of that money going? And what are you griping about now? Why are you so upset over this 3.3%? Well, it jumped to 8.7%. And what you will see, men of ordinary intelligence, can be prevented. Corruption, that is why I stepped in. This guy's taken that was crazy. This guy's taken a personal vendetta. Blackman Mooring, service masters, things of that nature. You ever wondered where those folks came from? In this meeting, this guy began to lay out a plan of how to get to where we're at now. Part of what he was saying is that the public adjuster was getting there before the insurance company was, and that they had a salvage king that they used that was not being utilized because the public adjusters were making it there first. So his proposal was the fire brigade. This is where the fire brigade had actually originated from, but you see that intent was not what they thought it was. The intent was to jump on the losses quickly so that nobody else would. The second intent was to start to get the insured to feel good about things. Hey, we're your insurance company. You are in good hands. We are a good neighbor. This is where this plan began to take action at. If we get out there and we pay you really quickly, our people come out there, we bring our own service people out there, and we jump on this loss very quickly, you will begin to do what? Trust us. They talk about that in here. They talk about building that trust. So they're starting to build the trust here. He brought a bunch of people together and did the investigation. And he's talking to what they call the General Adjustment Board, which is what we would call Fire Claim Central. The people never go out in the field. They don't ever do any of that stuff. They simply sit in the office and they direct where everything goes. But nobody actually goes in the field. When he was asking them about the public adjuster, he says that they all agreed that the public adjuster was unnecessary. He talks about the insurance company being horrified and persecuted by the mean old public because they were a bad insurance company. And we're getting to some very specific points, so we're just kind of touching through some of this where you can see what's going on. He starts to talk about fraud and how and it's the consumer protections that Doug is so familiar with, that anytime that you hear consumer protection, you better do the lateral block. Whatever's coming is anything but consumer protection. So they haven't talked about the insured during this whole time, about what's going on at any point to where we're at now. So when we get over here, they are talking about the fires that happened fraudulently. And as this document goes on, they would lead you to believe that this thing is a massive, massive problem, that it is going on to the levels like you've never seen, and they just literally have to get in front of it right now. He tells on himself at the end. The remedy. This is his plan. This is what he says must be done in 1921, and I want you to note the similarities of what he said and what you see as factual today. First, subject. Is that a nice word? Is subject a nice word? Do you have a nice fuzzy feeling when you're told you're going to be subjected to something? The public adjuster to a thorough and oral and written examination. You may ask what the extent of it should be. Well, is there any limit to that which a public adjuster claims he knows? And this is super important. Everybody's a large loss adjuster, correct? How can we all start out on day one large loss adjusters? We can't. How can we all be attorneys when we don't have a law license? How can we all be PAs when we don't have a PA license? How can we be all of these things that we're not? They're using a little bit of modicum of truth, salted it in with what they want to say. But if you listen to what they're saying, we're in modern day, it's the same way today. How many public adjusters have you met that's the best public adjuster that you've ever seen in the world? But yet they've never filed a single proof of loss. It's real easy to beat up on you when you haven't done the things that you're supposed to do. Notice again the proof of loss submitted by who? Public adjusters. This is 1921, and they're talking about the importance of the proof of loss, and this is how he's busting the public adjusters, because the proof of losses are fraudulent, right? That's what he's claiming, okay? Ask the adjuster how, when, and where he adjusted such and such loss. Take him over item by item. Within 15 minutes, you'll have him backsliding, dodging, trimming, and trying to pin his own evasions on his clerks or the insured. Finally, he may admit, well, I didn't compile that. How many times have you all heard this? As IAs, you heard it a million times. As a PA, you've probably said it quite a few times. But they were telling us then that it's a what type of problem? It's a factual problem. So if the opposite of what he's saying is true, what happens then? What if I do question the public adjuster and I say, sir, what is line item number 37? Well, it goes right here. Line item number 68, well, it's here. Where does the argument become? There's not one, is there? I've been deposed over 100 times. Do Do you know how many times I actually talked about line items? Less than a handful. Why? The line items were solid. Can't go after them. They're already there. That's what it is. Nobody can refute those things. And he's telling you the very same thing in this document. Take any loss where $8,000 was claimed and $4,000 finally accepted, and ask the public adjuster if the insured was entitled to $8,000. Why did you take $4,000? Are they talking about 1921 or are they talking about 2023? It's the exact same thing, is it not? So the people that have all the money, they have all of the data, and they knew this was going on back in 1921. Doug, why couldn't they have corrected it by now? Okay, and then let's ask the next question. If you don't know how to fill out a proof of loss, that's what his argument is that they don't know what they're doing and they're idiots. Why wouldn't this whole solution be about education? Not one time in this document do they talk about giving you guys education. Not a single time. What they talk about is how you are a menace, how you are vexatious, how you are a problem, but they don't one time say, you know what, these guys are necessary, and like an engineer association, we would want you to be smarter. Like the bar association, we would want you to go somewhere and have peer review, get some answers from somebody other than yourself, and there would be education available to all of you so that when you submitted a proof of loss that it would be valid, it wouldn't be fraudulent. What I'll submit to most of you is that most proof of loss that are fraudulent, they're not fraudulent because the guy was a crook. Fraudulent because the guy didn't know how to do what he's doing. So he put some stuff on there that didn't actually belong because that's what somebody else told him they should do. But it wasn't a nefarious act. This was 1921. If you have no statute in your state providing for the licensing of public adjusters, my talk is futile because it is impossible to think that such a law could ever be passed in your state. Someday I hope you may have electricity and automobiles and washing machines and wireless telegraph. That's talking about the time again. He's being facetious and saying you won't have these things that you just now got, but you said 5 years ago you wouldn't have the things that you have now. But yet here we are. The words worthy of a license in our agents and brokers license law are elastic enough to mean anything savoring of honesty. A man whose license is canceled and who appeals cannot always defeat you in court if you are aiming to guard the moral side of things. A good neighbor would do that, wouldn't they? If you were in good hands, you would be on the moral side of things, correct? Third, something with reverse English. It is self-prodding of an insurance department to a realization that the department's mission is to encourage and advance insurance by aggression. How many of you are working in Florida right now? How many of you understand what real aggression looks like? They're being aggressive over there. We've seen them be aggressive in states all over the southern United States. In Florida right now, they turned this apparatus on us, and it was the most effective that I've ever seen in my life. And if you didn't have a pocket full of money and some patience, you weren't going to make it. Since the time I first came with the Pennsylvania Department in August 1911, I've seen the fighting spirit of many homes offices gradually broken in cooperation between home offices discouraged by two causes: advanced age of executives and the result of nagging and attacking successful companies by some insurance commissioners and the public press. Not everybody was on board with this. Some of them were not on board with it because it wasn't right, and they saw it. Others were on board with it because they had other methods. It wasn't necessarily that they didn't want to get to the same means, but they had a different agenda than what this particular guy did. In a special patrol, hold on. Determine whether public adjusters of fire claims are useful or a menace. If you want results, If you want facts, the way to apprehend the male factor is to play the game even dirtier than he plays it. I can show you how. This is the Commissioner of Insurance telling us and everybody else that these guys are breaking the law. How do you get against these lawbreakers, Doug? According to this guy. There you go. We're going to go in there and we're going to break that law. We're going to get dirtier than they did. He says it out loud. Fourth, nothing whatsoever but providing the very thing which home officers should have provided years ago. Had they done so, they would have had the public, the financial institutions, and the federal government on a friendly basis and endorsing them to the limit. How many have driven down a Louisiana road, a Mississippi road, or a Florida road and saw the roadside assistance truck? What's it say on the side of it? State Farm. So you talk about what does that mean? Well, it means that State Farm has agreed with that state that they would provide X amount of dollars every year for this annual program. Say it's $30 million. We know it's something nice. So you're doing something that State Farm doesn't like, and State Farm says to you, you know that $30 million deal we got going on the highways? That's done. You now have a $30 million budget deficit. Are you going to be nice to them, or are you going to call them out? What I'm getting at is they've entrenched every single institution advertising. We put an ad out in Oklahoma. People started calling immediately. And then the ad went off the air, and we got a credit back from Clear Channel that said, hey, we got several calls from these advertisers of ours, and they said, if we continue to run your ad, they will no longer pay ads for us. So they pulled our ad. They have their tentacles in every single item that's going on. What's insured? Everything, isn't it? Everything that you can see, feel, and touch in this room is insured. You know what else is insured? Everything you can't see, feel, or touch. My actions, if I was get up and hit Philip, I'd be liable, wouldn't I? If I was to tell Philip in my professional capacity that he should make a decision and that became harmful to him, I'm what? I'm liable. That's all insured, isn't it? So they've figured out a way to insure every single thing. And when we insure it, we fill out applications, and then we also tell them what we're doing. Y'all have all noticed that all the hotels have specific insurers. All the gas stations have specific insurers. The school has specific insurers. Every industry has its own different specific industries inside of it that are insured. Each one of them collects every bit of data. It's a little deal that I go through in class. I think it's a good thing. Say that I'm a guy that sells corn. That's what I do every day. I sell corn. I sit in a rail yard, and I ship out 10 rail cars of corn every single day. Those rail cars are insured before I send them out, correct? If I'm going to increase the amount of rail cars that I'm going to send out tomorrow, what is the first thing that I have to do? To contact the insurance company and tell them, hey, you need to increase my premium because I'm going to increase my output. Instead of shipping 10 cars tomorrow, I'm going to start shipping 20. Every day from now for the foreseeable future, I'm going from 10 rail cars of corn to 20. Everybody that's in the corn industry is insured with this same people. So he gets a call from Doug, and Doug's increasing his production. He gets a call from you, and you're increasing your production. Philip's increasing his production, and I'm getting these calls in. I happen to have several $billion of your premiums sitting in a bank account that I've got them. This is part of the document that started that, the damn hedge funds. I've got all this money that I can play with. And Doug and you told me what? What should I buy right now? Why should I buy it? You're giving me the insider information before it's ever hits anybody else's desk. You're telling me, the guy with all of the money and all of the data, what I should be buying in every single industry that you know. You want to know how they're making money? You want to know how they're funding all of it? That's how. It's the hedge. I have you telling me insider trading before it ever occurs. I can then take the money. Say that we see Hurricane Ida coming out of there, and we go, okay, we see it's coming. I bought the website, Hurricane Ian, insurancebusters.net, before it ever became a hurricane. Why? Because I've got enough history behind me, know that sumbitch is going to hit and that that's a good thing to have. As I was buying the website, they were buying shingles, decking, all manner of tarps and things that were necessary for that storm because they knew what was fixing to be in high demand. All of that very stuff. Why do we have prompt payment statutes? The government had to put a trigger in. Hey, we've let you take all the money and go run with it, but we found out that you just take it forever, Philip. You just take off with it with no plans to pay it back. So we put the triggers in, which are the prompt payment statutes, but ask yourself the simple question, what triggers prompt payment? Full compliance of that damn policy, doesn't it? If I never got you to believe that you were supposed to perform at all, then when are you going to trigger it? You're not, and that's just fine with me. It's just fine that you never triggered coverage, that I'm actually going to owe you a money or put myself in a problem when I start getting in trouble. I would organize a fire insurance, well, let me start up here. Nothing whatsoever but providing the very thing which home offices, we already read that. I have lately written my suggestions to the National Board, and I would like nothing better than to have funds without limit placed in my hands for an experiment of 3 months. Now, is this guy a vigilante or is he an insurance commissioner? He's got some pretty radical ideals that he wants to do, and he's got a lot of money behind him. I would organize a fire insurance patrol which actually patrolled, and I would combine it with a salvage squad and a pick and shovel brigade. There would be night and day service, immediate getting on and remaining on any loss of what? I dare any one of you to make that statement inside of a deposition and see what happens to your ass. Are you supposed to protect the expensive insureds, or are you supposed to protect all insureds? All of them, right? No make a shit how big the claim is. You're supposed to protect every one of them. This is the guy that's trying to write the policy, and what did he just say? He singled it out. We're going to get on them large ones first. Immediate clearing away of debris, removal of all goods to a spacious warehouse, arrangements for immediate rehabilitation of partly damaged goods. Who the hell is he talking about? Blackman Mooring, service masters. Who do they work for? Who pays their checks? The insurance carrier does. Where's their allegiance at? This is the beginning of those folks in 1921. The honest businessman who suffers a loss needs immediate help. If it's any loss of size. If it's a small loss, he does not need immediate help. That's what he said, correct? The company's troubles and 1% of his. Every loss should be followed. The large losses immediately, the smaller losses within a few hours after the occurrence. If you're already diminishing them here, that diminishing is just going to follow down like our industry does. When I hear people say they won't take small losses, I cringe. This man right here, Philip, he and I went to war. Merlin Law Group, the Florida Supreme Court, we all went to war back in 2015. Part of it was we were naive. I was. We filed 128, I think, lawsuits, and we did it in 2 weeks. Doesn't sound bad. Do you understand that Oklahoma typically has 10 to 15, or at that point in time, their whole system was available for 10 to 15 lawsuits per year. Per year. And my dumb ass, and him, and Chip, and Larry Bash went down there and filed 10 years' worth of lawsuits in 2 weeks. They were pissed off at us, weren't they? And then they were also mad because Chip came from Florida and those damn Gators, and I came from Texas and the Longhorns. That was part of what the aggravation was. Had anything to do with the damn claims.
Righteous claims that all got paid in full.
They did. All of them got paid, did they not? And the whole problem is that I had sat, and I literally wrote the judge, and everybody was freaked out. You wrote the judge, you're not supposed to do that. Well, we're in extreme situations here. These attorneys who were bashing on us for bringing them up there, oh, you brought these attorneys from out of town, out of state to come do these claims? I sent the judge a little letter. Said, I'm going to get my own attorney. We're going to come back on this thing. And while we're at it, all these attorneys that are talking about us bringing Philip up here failed to tell you that I sat in their office across from them at their desk, and they would take every $250,000 claim that I had and above. But what they wouldn't do was take Grandma's claim out in Ardmore. They wouldn't take your mama's claim over in Seminole. And I told them, that's why we had 128 claims. If you don't take all of the claims, you get none of the claims. All of them deserve the respect. Every single one of them does, and I'm not letting a single one go until we have all of them. And because we did, they were all successful. We won every one. We changed the entire property and casualty climate in Oklahoma, I think, for the better. Yes. Okay. The smaller loss a few hours after the occurrence, and photographs should be taken of every loss. They just got electricity. How are you going to take a photograph of every loss? Think in your head of what the cameras were like back then. This monstrosity of a machine that you had to do all kinds of things to get it to work. But here's what's peculiar. And civil engineers and chemists should be used. How many of you do tornado claims? Quite a few. How many of you do hail claims? Okay. The ones that do both, how many times do you see an engineer on hail as opposed to how many times you see an engineer on a tornado? Very rare on tornado, isn't it? It's plausible deniability. See, hail is opinion. That could be hail or it could be mechanical damage. We can argue about this all day long. However, you have a house that was hit by a tornado. You walk up to the front door and you see in the front door, the 3 foot of the front door, it's dropped 1.5 inches. You know there's some structural damage in here. For heaven's sake, don't bring that engineer in here. That engineer walks in here, he's going to tell you that in order to fix that crack, this whole thing's got to come down. So we don't want him there, but we do want him somewhere where his opinion can be questioned, but it's not going to get his license removed. If he goes in there and lies in that tornado-damaged house, we got him. He's done. He won't do it no more. 1921, they told you what you're going to see today. You're going to see engineers on every hail claim. Who's seeing engineers on every hail claim? They call them out before they call anybody else out. They don't even call their own adjuster, and they call the engineer out. Okay, this whole thing that we're doing is about knowledge. This is a very small group of men controlling everything that we see today. And it comes to a culmination of they took the education away from each and every one of you by trying to deny that this thing existed. So you've had no place to go. There was no place that you could walk into and get education. You boys are graduates. Where was the place that you could get education before the boot camp got there? Over and over again, I hear this said. There is, after 103 years that we're chasing back now, where's the education at for this industry? Where are the associations at? Where are the accreditations at? Where are all those things at? He's talked about would absolutely drive the public adjuster out of business. That is their stated purpose. Any of you that are familiar with the Texas legislative body, they made some laws in 2017. They came back in 2019 and said, hey, what do you want to do about the public adjusters? And one of the guys said, hey, I think we did enough in the last session. Well, why? We had less public adjusters renew their license, and we had less public adjusters apply for a new license, which means that we were successful in our endeavor. The powers to be have been trying to fade us out since 1921 that we have in writing. Keep in mind that the number of actual criminals is small. Very small indeed. You folks have been around this profession for a while now. Look around you. How many criminals do you see around you sitting in the desk beside you? How many locusts? Well, Badger knows. Badger's got his part to play. And I don't mind Badger coming, but he's going to sit out there. Yeah, he doesn't get a platform, and if he wants to come, he can do like everybody else and sit right there. Nobody wants to keep anybody out of here. But do I want to give you a platform to be non-committal, to not answer questions or, to not give us a response that's something that we could actually definitively use. I don't think that's a good idea. But them coming in and seeing what we're doing, that's what we should do. You should open the doors up. The only reason they're closed right now is for lighting. Other reason, every damn thing that we're doing should be right out in the open, because if it's out in the open, we're not hiding anything. It means that trustworthiness mark has been met whether you like the shit or not. One bad man's deeds have a far-reaching effect. But if you apprehend him and his aids and abettors, you accomplish much. This is super important. In fact, a trial without conviction accomplishes much because defenses cost money. If I come after you as the state regulator, Florida, and I give you some trumped up shit and say we're going to fight, whose money is Florida using? Taxpayers. Yours, mine. Whose money are we going to have to use? Ours. And the way they work it, you're guilty until you're proven innocent. You must prove yourself innocent in a public court. To a person who relies on word of mouth, referrals, how's this going to affect your business model? I don't knock doors. I refuse anybody in my company to knock doors. Why? Candace hit it on the head 50 times. Why are we here? Well, that son of a bitch came knocking on the door. What do you mean there was no problem before you showed up? None whatsoever. Didn't even know how to loss. So now I have 50 files where you knocked on the door and there was not a problem on any of these singles files, and when we take the common denominator, what happened was you. You kept going out there starting shit where there wasn't no shit. Hell, you can advertise to a bunch of stuff where the claims doesn't come that. We feed. We've been feeding for a long, long time. It's something I love to do. Find the hobby that you like, get invested in the community. But that knocking doors will make bad problems, and this guy's a reason why. The time is not ripe for me to present here all that I desire to present. Eventually, I shall submit to the commissioners many things of interest and between sessions if need be. In other words, I can't speak about what we're talking about here because it's getting a lot worse than what we're saying. I want to make certain that my opinion of the public adjusters in my city, not referring to the exception, is clear in your mind. If any man came to me and asked my advice saying that he contemplated becoming a public adjuster of fire claims, I would say to him, you have a very small chance of remaining honest. You have every possible chance of becoming a trimmer, trickster, liar, perjurer, and briber. Eventually, you are almost certain to be indicted. This is the son of a bitch that's going to tell you whether you're trustworthy or not, whether you're competent or not. And he stated in multiple aspects, you as a public adjuster will never meet that criteria. You ever heard of impossible to perform? Would that look like what that is maybe? Impossible to perform, putting some things out there and well, it's like the claim is now. I call it the ever-moving goalpost. When's overhead and profit due? Well, shit, it's 3 trades. Well, there's 6. Oh, man, it's a complexity. Well, that's pretty complex, but it's small. That's pretty large. That's too large. In other words, every single time that you get close to what they told you the goal was, they do like Lucy did to Charlie Brown and snatch that son of a bitch right out of you and you land flat on your back. Why? Because you didn't learn how to plant the goalpost. You haven't been taught by them or by anybody else that the policy is the damn king, unless it breaks that state law. Otherwise, that policy says what's going to happen, not them. We've evolved to the place where they want us, where they are dictating every single thing that's going on. And what you must understand at this point is we got to stand up, not be violent. Stand up and perform your job. We need your data. The legislative bodies are never going to take anything that we say seriously unless when we say, hey, they're doing this, and they say, Phil, show me. And Phil says, well, one day at band camp we had this. That's never going to work. We have to show statistics. We have to show the data of everything that happened, and the key point is that it happened to you, it happened to you, it happened to you. In other words, there was a what? A pattern. The pattern is necessary to show what is going on and that it was absolutely coordinated. What should happen is Philip, you and Sean and a couple of you boys with the law license should dig into this son of a bitch. DeSantis' plan that he did to the public adjusters, it's right there. They said, now there's a lot more than what I only have a limited amount of time. I usually take a full day on this. The first day of camp, I take going over this entire document and we read it like we read the policy. We start at the top and we read every damn line and we go through it so you get the complete meaning. And each time I read it, I get more and more angry. You fucking did it. You literally, this is all a plan that you set into motion over 100 years ago, and it has been super effective. Look around the room. Y'all represent a large majority of the public adjusters that are in the United States right now, and the attorneys who represent them. They nearly annihilated the most. Think about this. I'm an idiot with the GED. I have one of the most high-paying jobs in the world. I didn't have to do a whole lot to qualify to get it. I basically went, took down this test, read a little bit, took a test, and I passed the test, got the bond, applied to the state. The state gave me a license, and now what am I able to do? Take on your largest investment. The realtor has to go through how much? Everybody involved at a level of money that we're involved in has to go through massive education, massive schooling to get what? To touch that consumer in this realm. But if we ever agreed that we have to put you through it, then we're agreeing in that same breath that the insured has duties after a loss. Daly freaked me out yesterday. When he said the insured had no duty but to file the claim, I about fell out of my damn chair. There was a whole room full of people that did. Who heard that yesterday? Yeah. When he was walking out, and he put on a killer presentation yesterday. He addressed the situation, and he did it masterfully. And then right before he walks off the stage, he goes, yeah, the insured doesn't have to do anything but file the claim. Contract says different. I didn't understand that. I don't think I ever will. In conclusion, gentlemen, I am determined during my short official career to advance the interest of the insurance throughout this country. I believe the reason that he's talking about it as short is because what I said earlier. I believe that he was sent here for this specific thing to do this specific goal, and then he was going to move on somewhere else and do something else. Or remedy. Responsibility, duty, accountability, liability. We have got to become that which we seek. If you want the insurance company to treat you fairly, then you better treat them fairly. If you want them to be honest with you, then you better be honest with them. If it takes you a month and a half to get a proof of loss to them and you scream at them in the 15-day period that they haven't got on their deal, what does that make you? Makes you a hypocrite, yes, sir. So we are going to have to step up on every single level and provide that data that hasn't been provided to them. Otherwise, we're on the opposite edge of a very slippery slope, and they've got their tentacles in. You heard Renee talk about proposed legislation. You've heard every attorney up here talking about how bad it's getting. You've seen it for yourself. This is not going to get better on its own. Nothing is going to fix itself and going and sitting down in the corner and hoping that somebody else is going to do it. You are that somebody else. That's why you're here. It's not going to take me, Sean, Philip, all of the people that are involved. It's going to take the grassroots of who we are as a profession standing up and doing your part. What does your part look like? Number one, do your damn job. Do your job. Don't put them in a position where they have to deny your fee based upon the fact that you couldn't answer a simple question. Sir, do you believe that your 10% fee is due? Can you tell me what you did for this insured that would indicate to us and this jury why we should pay you 10%? Do you have an answer? What is it? Bam. You've been listening. And it's that simple. I don't need to go into a whole bunch of shit about how badass I am, how I did all of this stuff. No, I performed the insurance duties after a loss. I went to number 1, was done. I checked that shit off. I went to number 2. I checked that off. I went to number 3. I performed all of those duties. So now that you've verified that I performed all of those duties, then I believe that my 10% is owed. But that goes typically the flip. Most of the people aren't filing proof of loss. I get to number 1, report the claim. Yes, did you report the claim? Fantastic. All right, you got number 1. We get down there, number 3 or number 4, and it says submit to us within 60 days a sworn proof of loss. Did you get this one done? No. Now you're done. Because the suit against us clause doesn't say partial. It doesn't say 9 out of 10, 11 out of 12. It says all policy provisions must be met before you file suit. It's gotten so good that what we really have, and this may piss off some attorneys, but it shouldn't, we have very high-priced PIAs that are taking 30 to 40%, and they're not even aware of what they're doing. They become paper shufflers. A file comes into the office, they get all of the supporting documentation that the PIA should have got. They review the document for the very first time that it's ever been seen. They go directly to the duties after a loss and say, okay, this is what we need to check first. We need to make sure this shit got done. And it didn't get done, so what do you have to do, Philip? You have to do them, don't you? And if you did them, where does your attorney's fee set on that? If you did them, the attorney did them. You'd have a contingency fee? The insurance company's going to pay you to perform those duties? I'm not trying to trap you, I'm really not. Well, what I'm trying to get at is that if you perform those duties for the insured once you're in litigation, the bad faith element is almost gone. The insurance company never had an opportunity to perform after the insured did. So you're involved at the table as the attorney for the insured. Because you're there, the insurance company has their attorney there. And you're both attorneys. And once you perform these duties, typically that other guy on the other side, just like Oklahoma, looks at it and says, well, damn it, Philip, you did everything you were supposed to do. And we do owe you some money. That's exactly what you said, and they pay it. But did they pay your fee on top of that? Mm-mm. Sometimes, yes. I'm not trying to get to the sometimes. I'm not trying to catch them out in the weeds on a sometime. I'm trying to get to a procedural aspect where we do a specific thing that's a specific result. Perform the duties after a loss and get them to you. Yeah, if we perform the duties after a loss, the insurance company fails. If we agree that the duties after a loss is the public adjuster's job, we all agree that, right? What do I do once I'm done? See, there's the big question. What do you do when you're done? If we agree that I'm done, we agree that I've completed my job and my fee is due now, what more can I legally do? Get your ass in trouble for the unlicensed practice of law, typically, or get accused of it either way. Why? Because you know that you've done your job. You know that your job is completed. What has to happen now is it gets to get into competent hands that can take it to the next level. If the file wasn't ready for them, it means that they're going to have to become the public adjuster. And it gets very expensive for them to do so. To me, a properly executed file to go to an attorney is one that's already been proved. It means that when it hits the man's hand, that he should get his experts and they should go verify what's going out there. Is this correct or is this not correct with their own report? He shouldn't have to go create all of the whole claim. You know how expensive that gets? That's why we have mergers going on with the attorneys. They took a whole bunch of claims, and then the insurance company, smart as they are, started dragging them out, spreading them out, knowing that defenses cost money. So if I get you dragged out on all of these things and you're having to actually go back and work the claim for the first time, you're paying for that. And then at the end of the deal, when you finally do settle, what's the public adjuster that was involved in the claim going to want? You know this one really well. They're going to want paid, aren't they? You didn't do your job. I had to do your job for you, and now I had to pay for it. I had to pay extra experts. I had to take extra time. I had to do all of this extra stuff. Now that all of this is done and we finally cleaned up your damn mess, you want me to now take 10% of this money that I didn't get the fees on and pay it to you? Bullshit. That's the thing Candace was talking about. Integrity, morals. If you didn't do your job, you shouldn't get paid. If you can't answer that duties after a loss question, You didn't do the one thing that you were supposed to do. And it doesn't matter how many experts you sent out, doesn't matter how many people you brought out, how many meter tests you did, moisture mapping. None of that matters if the proof of loss was not submitted along with it, and that proof of loss was in compliance with the policy that was in effect at the time of loss. Questions? No? Go ahead.
Something I've seen recently in estimated commercial policy is, obviously, it'll say that it's a request, but
Right.
it's supplying us with the information we request. So the information that's required in the proof of loss is not even listed in the
Okay, what I'm telling you when I say submit it to me at my request, and this is a good one for everybody to pay attention on. It's merely a nice way of me saying to you that I don't want you to start the clock yet. Hey, Jonathan, don't start the clock yet. Don't start the clock until I send you paperwork. The contract already tells you what the proof of loss requires. That's what those steps are. When it says that we need the mortgage holder, we need to know what type of building it was, what it's being used for.
That's what I was saying, is specifically for most policies.
Oh, on our document.
Yeah, it'll just say,
There's only a handful that say on our document. I'll tell you that. And on those documents, it's real simple. See attachment A. This is attachment A. You fill out the technical information that they wanted on there, and when it gets to the description, see attachment A, and that's your proof of loss. Not a big thing. Yes, sir.
What if it takes 3 to 4 weeks or more to get the certified policy?
How many policies have you read in Louisiana? Yeah. They're all nominally the same. There's going to be little different nuances in there. You should move forward, and if they haven't got you the policy, then you should file a complaint. And any discrepancies that you don't have because they wouldn't provide it to you, how are you going to be held accountable for that? You've got a demand in them to give me the policy, right? You sent the notice is in there, they have that demand, and they didn't provide you with something. That's them withholding it from you. That's why they would get in trouble for doing so. That document, the certified copy of that policy, and I know many people have a problem getting it, but they have a problem getting it because you haven't been getting it before. Our office has very little problem getting certified policies on every single claim that we do. And I mean, it's just a thing, it happens. You send it in, they send the policy. Nobody even thinks about it. But that tells you that we have specific people that deal with my company and specific people that deal with your company. That's called discrimination, right? They have different people working on my claims than they have working on your claims. Yeah, it shouldn't be doing that. What's so special about the public adjuster that you now have to bring a special person in to deal with the public adjuster? Doesn't make any sense, does it? Did I answer the question, or did I babble? I might have babbled. I'll do that.
Typically what I'll do is I'll see if there's a standard fire policy. I'll make sure our loss form complies with the standard fire policy. But when we're still sending 3, 4, 5 requests for the certified policy, sometimes it comes in a month.
No, you should send one, and when you don't get it back, you should send a follow-up. If you don't get this to me, then I'm going to go ahead and file the complaint. That's a legitimate complaint to the Department of Insurance. I can't call the Department of Insurance, send a complaint in there and say, I don't like this guy because I didn't like his shirt. That's not a valid complaint. He showed up at 12:30, he was supposed to be here at 12. That's not a valid complaint. But when I actually do something that breaks the law, like Louisiana has a statute, I think it's 14 days that they're supposed to respond to any written request. The second that you hit the 15 days, the complaint should go in. Now, this is something different on Louisiana because the way their complaint status is, and this is what we need to look at specifically over there. They have the little hand guide that they come out with that says you're supposed to report the shit, right? That if you see it, you're supposed to report it, but then they prohibit you as a public adjuster from reporting it. I think that there's a way for us to go file the complaint not based upon this insurance claim, this insurance company, but actually on this adjuster and his actions. Not sure, something that we have to check, but we're working on Louisiana heavily. A whole bunch of people are. How does an insured know what to file a complaint on? They don't. They don't have any idea. Who's the only person that legally has the right, besides this guy, to look and see what that statute is and be able to tell you, okay, yeah, you were supposed to do this in 14 days and you didn't. How did you even know that it existed? Yeah. In other words, it's almost an impossible to perform act. You're expecting the insured who has no knowledge and doesn't do this at all to actually go read the statutes, read the whole entire policy, and have a working, knowledgeable aspect of it to be able to file a valid, legitimate complaint by design. It's that way on purpose. That's why it's so damn hard to fix, because in their mind it's not broken. Some of the attorneys who think it's not broken, they don't want to fix the system. Why would we want to fix it? We're making a shit ton of money on it. There's only a handful of those, but they're absolutely out there. Questions?
We got time for maybe one more question.
Good? Fantastic. Stand up. Be accounted. Invest in yourselves, invest in the profession, and if they come after you, make sure that you've done those first things. When they come after you, typically they already have you. And if they don't, they're going to perform that wonderful thing that Candace went over, which is discovery of some sort, whether they call it that, they call it something else. Discovery by any other name is still discovery. They're doing on a fishing expedition and they're trying to find something. Make sure that your records are intact. Y'all have a good rest of the conference.
Round of applause for Cal Spoon. Thank you, Cal.